And welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. This is your third instalment of the Matchday coverage. We are collaborating with Celtic Down Under, and from that particular show we have Sean Connolly. Welcome back to the show, Sean, and your namesake Lawrence down under, actually, ironically enough. Down under us too. And unusually, Lawrence, you're wearing green and white. No like you to be wearing green and white. Classic wee Sergio tennis shirt. Brilliant, love it.
I'm just disappointed that I don't have my limeade today, mate.
They don't have what?
I don't have my limeade today.
I do remember. Oh, Lawrence, I do remember when Celtic won the double in 87-88 and they go into the dressing room, the brilliant footage of Tommy Burns and Roy Aitken with their bottles of limeade. The green juice, everything was green, superb.
But yeah, it was either limeade or orange crush, let's be honest.
Or a bit of both. I don't know what you call that cocktail. Half time. We were talking about games that sometimes fizzle out, Sean, and I don't think that one fizzled out. Cracking second half as well.
I'll actually say I thought it was kind of for the first 15 minutes. I thought we didn't create anything really, and then Kilmarnock had a couple of half chances, and then we made the substitutions, and then we raised the level at that point. So I thought the substitutes were really effective changing the game, and I don't know if that was just energy or whatever, but like it was, or if it was Callum McGregor pushing further forward so Aaron Mooy could sit in his old job. But I thought the subs changed the game in the second half.
Yeah, you see, this is one of the big things that we've got now. We did have it, I think, to a lesser degree after the January transfer window last season, Lawrence, but we really do have an embarrassment of riches on the bench. And I think what Sean says is spot on. Even if you get to that point where, McInnes is parking the bus, it's going to be harder to break them down. You've got those changes. We're going to be talking about the goals, but how important is this strength and depth that Ange now has at his disposal, Lawrence?
Well, I think it's pivotal to the way he wants to play football. Pressing from the front. It's hard to do that for 90 minutes for an individual. So we need the quality to come off the bench and continue that pressing. But, even if it's not from open football, third game in a row, a goal from a corner. And then it's another goal scoring centre half, Carol Starfield.
Yeah.
What, 1 in 50?
He's getting better all the time, though.
What was the biggest shock? Was it that Starfield scored? Was it that Power didn't get booked? Or was it Celtic TV didn't cut out?
I think. I mean, listen, going to open a branch of Clinton's when he finishes his career, isn't it?
I was going to say it was not only that Starfield scored, but he scored with his left foot, Sean. So let's go back to what we were saying before. We know nothing about football, right? Because Kyogo scores, and obviously, Abada, we were talking about him being on the bench. I think Maeda got 2 assists in the first half. Yeah, and Starfield scores with his left foot, and we said he was useless on his left foot. So fair play to him. And I loved his celebration.
Of the game.
That's a good shout, actually. I mean, very unusually, we had 2 overhead kicks that we'll talk about. Which was the best technique, Sean? I'll throw that one over to you.
Giacomakis easily. Although Jens's was very reactive, which is impressive itself, But I love Giacomakis because when you've got time to think about it and when it's coming down straight above you, that's very much a different thing from swinging round in a kind of volley motion. His was very impressive. Goalkeeper didn't have a chance.
He did not. Sean Thompson comes in. Noticed when Mooy came on, this is the point you were making, Sean, he was playing as a 6 with Calmac, pushing further up. I think Mooy, he's been quite a shrewd addition to the squad, Lawrence. I remember when he came in and, there were some people on social media saying that it was unambitious or, penny pinching and all this kind of stuff. I've said from the start it was a no-brainer to bring Mooy in. I think he showed that today.
I was talking to your friend, Big Chris Sutton, down at the Peter Scarf in Linwood a few weeks back, and he was saying it's a free transfer for a £5-6 million player. Mm-hmm. Why aren't we absolutely ecstatic? I said, he's a £5-6 million player, great pedigree, one of the first names in the Australian team sheet, and it's an area that lets Callum go further forward. Ange obviously knows him very well. It's it's definition of a no-brainer. I just can't believe people weren't more excited.
Yeah, this is the thing though, because I think we did get 2 marquee signings, if you could call them that, in Carter Vickers and Jota. But every signing can't be a £6 or £7 million player, Sean. And I think that sometimes a Mooy will come in, potentially just to bolster the squad, but also we needed someone in there when you're looking at the likes of Beaton and the aforementioned Rogic leaving the club. And I think you've probably seen a lot more of him, actually, Mooy, so you can maybe give us a wee bit more of an insight. But I think he's got the defensive and the attacking qualities that we probably lost with the two players I mentioned.
It's interesting because he does usually play a lot more attacking for Australia than he did today. I actually thought he kind of was lacking a bit of urgency when he was on the ball compared to what it's usually like with McGregor there. And then there was a similar kind of thing with Starfelt when he had it at his feet, which could just be lack of sharpness, lack of match fitness, coming in from the cold, that sort of thing. But yeah, he does normally play further forward for Australia, and he's not usually getting a lot of shots in goal and being that kind of getting into the box kind of player. Maybe he's just moving back with age as well. It could be that too.
It does have the look of the Tommy Gravison about him as well. Another marquee signing that didn't really work out for at Celtic, but there's plenty of stories about him, that's for sure. Joe Porter, Celtic had a giant bag of Haribo Star Mix, absolutely wonderful, which reminds me I need to stop at the garage on the way home. And Joe Fulham, parked buses aren't going to cut the mustard with this team. Let's talk about that comment, Lawrence. Many Celtic sides have come up against this parked bus mentality. I'd understand it. You've got teams there that a point against Celtic, regardless of how they get it, is magnificent, right? Because you can't just write off the 4 games against Celtic and they park the bus and they're frustrating us and all this kind of thing. But it does seem as though we do find a way. Even some games last season, it was a frustration. It was certainly a frustration the season before. And does it just come down again to that moment where if they have sussed you out and they are frustrating you, we just have the quality on the bench to shake it up a bit as well?
Yeah, we can bring something different on, but it's the volume of chances we create every game. And now we seem to have our corners sorted, It's almost a goal at a start now. So, yeah, it's a bit of a worry for teams what to do. Jota's just been absolute class. Taylor playing inverted fullback. What a game again he's had today. I think this is a wee bit more complex system than most teams play, and it's harder for them to pick players up. So, yeah, we've got strength and depth. Jared did warn us that it's the second season things get really good, and on the evidence so far, it's beginning to look that way.
He did warn us of this, Sean. We did. I think Jared became more of a regular at that point where we wanted to know more about Ange Postecoglou. He was speaking about this second season syndrome, the sophomore season. But I think I maybe misread that, thinking we were almost expected not to win anything in the first season because it was all about bringing together this team. It didn't work out this way, and the movement that's been made in terms of the transfer market, one new player, if you don't count Carter Vickers and Jota, started today, but we do look as though we're a much more cohesive unit. What else can we look forward to this season from Ange? Because I don't think he's finished, both in this transfer window and in January as well.
Well, the things that Jared's he knows more about it than me, but the things he's talked about most for second season is the cross-field ball becoming more of a feature towards the wingers or the fullbacks. He said that's apparently something that comes in second season. And something that I've noticed based on pre-season and now is that the goalkeeper is actually a lot higher. Like kind of like what he tried to do in last pre-season and then backed out of. It seems to be actually happening now. And the inverted fullbacks are actually starting inside now rather than coming inside, which is another thing I've noticed too. So there's been changes throughout, but the thing that, again, the thing to watch out for the most, I think, is going to be that cross-field ball. And I think that's probably part of the reason why Aaron Mooy has come in, because he does have that. And Callum McGregor has it too. So I think it's something that you kind of expect from the fullbacks as well, which is maybe why Juranovic is really keeping someone like Ralston out of the team too.
Yeah, I want to see more of Mooy. There's a few comments coming in here talking about Bernabe and bringing him in and having a look at him. But I just think that Ange Postecoglou is ruthless in his pursuit, and obviously he's not just going to give any cheap minutes. Paul McLean, Celtic gathering ahead of steam now. It's great to look forward to every game, including the one on the 3rd of September. 35 games unbeaten domestically, Lawrence. I think that probably exceeds any expectations that we had. And the last defeat coming against Livingston last season. Of course, we've got, I think every game's massive, but we've got the game coming up against Rangers. We now sit ahead of them. I think it's 2 goals better off when it comes to goal difference. We're 9 of a goal difference, and Rangers are sitting on 7. Obviously, we're not concentrating on anyone except Celtic. But here's the thing, again, we will talk about it because it's bizarre. It was mentioned in the commentary as well. Got to shake your head at the mentality of these clubs. Sold for £1 came in. I'm not sure what that means. Not selling empty seats. Under 10,000 there today. Cost them almost 200 grand. No wonder Scottish football's gubbed. We spoke a wee bit about this before the game. I mean, it didn't do us any harm, Sean. But if you're going to look at the situation based on business and the economy of it, it doesn't make sense. I mean, we went to Livingston last season, they beat us. It made no difference to it. It doesn't, rid yourself of the home advantage. It really doesn't. But surely, for the 2 games against Celtic and the 2 games against Rangers, you can make an extra nearly £250,000 times 4. Sure, that's a no-brainer.
Well, yeah, but they also probably spent, the Kilmarnock fans probably spent all their money in the bus fare to Ibrox yesterday as well. But I also don't think we help ourselves with, and we don't do it that often, but today some of the songs weren't very good coming from the away end. There was one particular that we seem to have gotten rid of and came back today, aimed at Derek McInnes. Is it the sectarian one? You know what I'm talking about? I don't know if I should say the lyrics.
He's mentioned it before, Sean. He's actually spoken about it before when he was the manager of Aberdeen, didn't he? And it's something that it's obviously a huge hot potato of a topic. I've seen a few people trying to go toe-to-toe with this argument online. And it's one of the ones that you really need to be prepared for a bit of a to and fro, because there's a lot of people who will oppose that kind of view, but it has been pretty prevalent, and not just at the away games either. And it's something I was talking about during the week, and it is something I'm sure we will focus on in a big way. Do you think that plays a part, Lawrence, when teams are making these decisions? Because I know that JP had a very interesting Twitter discussion with Alan Burrows at Motherwell, who took the time to try and explain why he didn't give Celtic 2 or 3 stands at Fir Park.
I think, saying economically it makes sense for these 4 games. They've got to look at it longer. If they lose fans that come to the rest of the home matches because of this, and lose supporters overall, because I think Alan Burrows said, look, the Daster fans, they're doing what their fans want. The Motherwell fans don't want to give their stadium over to Celtic fans or the Rangers fans. So why should we? And you can see the point, Motherwell to lose a couple of thousand fans out of that.
I think that's what Alan Burrows was saying, Lawrence, wasn't it? Yeah.
It's long term for them. You've got to remember, as much as Celtic's everything to us, these clubs aren't run for the benefit of Celtic or Rangers. They've got to run for the benefit of themselves and for their community. I think there should be more people in there. I think there's got to be a happy medium. Kilmarnock had sporadic fans through the 3 stadiums, the 3 stands that they had. Could they maybe sell their season books in block and say, well, look, we're going to try and house most of these in the main stand and then behind the goal, or whatever they want to do it? Because some of the arguments, we don't want to move fans for individual games. Well, be a bit smarter about the way you sell your seats then, and your season books. But at the end of the day, they've got to be run for the benefit of their own fans. And, we do kind of look at things through a Celtic state of mind. If you want
we certainly do.
Now, the way you were explaining the kind of league table, mate, goal difference and all that, I think you were looking for the phrase looking down on the Rangers is what you were looking for.
Someone has mentioned that in the comments, Lawrence, yes. Liam Tennant comes in, overhead kick, nutmegs as well. Jeez Louise. I tell you what, when you're looking at the Giakoumakis Kyogo situation and who starts, Kyogo's not had a bad start to the season, Sean, but when you can bring on Giakoumakis, after the season he had top goal scorer last season, and he seems hungry, doesn't he? He seems hungry for goals. I still think we don't change the shape to accommodate anyone, because having that the 2 players really vying for a jersey, I think works very, very well throughout a long season. There's going to be injuries, there's going to be a loss of form, of course there is. But again, Giakoumakis comes on and just reminds us what he can offer when he comes onto the park, which is completely different from what Kyogo offers as well. And it's a great headache for Ange to have, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, they don't seem to be missing a step when the changes are made. Like all the players seem to know each other so well that even if there is even if there is an adjustment to where you're going to put that ball or what kind of run you can expect to be seeing ahead of you, they're not missing a beat on that. They're adjusting to it on the hop and doing it very well. They all seem to know each other that well now.
Paul Cunningham comes in. Free scoring, never boring. Someone should put that on a metal sign and sell it. Stevie boy, we don't ever stop. We don't stop, absolutely not. Somebody should put that on a t-shirt and sell it. And Jungle Lion, remember Suter for Player of the Year. Surely somebody didn't say that, did they? Suter for Player of the Year. Ian McMonigal, Greg Taylor, my man of the match, brilliant display. Let's not forget just how good Greg Taylor was across the entire game, because I think at full time you tend to focus on the second half. But what a performance again, Sean. Did you see this in Greg Taylor? I mean, I remember talking a few years back about watching the players in an away European game and having the opportunity actually to see them kind of behind the scenes. And Greg Taylor had something of a leadership about him. He had a quality about him for someone who was so young and actually quite new to the squad, but it was pretty clear that the players did respect him. He was a bit of a leader. And I think what we've seen here, in fact, Kevin Graham got loads of stick for saying he should be the captain at one point. But Greg Taylor, it really is coming to the fore. However, if there is an injury or a suspension, you've got a guy sitting on the bench there that we've not even seen in Bernabe, a new signing, Argentinian player, yet to make his competitive debut. But did you see it in Taylor? Did you see this improvement in him?
I mean, when we came back from the COVID break 2 years ago, or whenever it was, the chat was that he was the one that had done the most work. Well, everyone was at home, like based on the metrics that were being fed through in these sports bras that the players wear. And, in the attraction of him as a player at that point was how reliable he was, how sturdy he was. He was always a 6 or 7, and he was never going to give away an easy goal, that sort of thing. And since then he's gone up. He went up a level last year, and he seems to have just gone up another level this year. And I don't really know where it's come from, but I'm very happy with it, to be honest.
Yeah, one guy who did support him from the very beginning through thick and thin was Lawrence Conley, who just so happens to be on the show today. Lawrence, you did see something in Greg Taylor. It was one of the ones, like all last season we kept talking about Tony Ralston, and then there was this discussion point during the pre-season where we were going to say who's going to be the Tony Ralston next season. I didn't mean somebody coming in who had been at the club, etc. Just that improvement in a player, and I think we are seeing it. But it started last season, didn't it?
Yeah, Taylor's work rate is just phenomenal, and even when he was in a team that's gone through a few years back sticky patches, he's one of the guys that never hid in the park. You could see guys out there not showing for the ball and not making the effort. Nothing you could ever accuse Greg Taylor of. And, the phrase "we never stop" or we don't stop, that just really epitomises Greg and his attitude to playing football. So, yeah, in many ways, he's an ideal guy for Ange to coach and to bring his game up a level. And I think, as a wee aside, something else that Jared said, so he's seen Ange play 4-2-2-2 and win the league with it. Maybe we might coming in a bit and Taylor's game going on. We might even get a chance to see Kyogo and Giakoumakis up front in that kind of formation.
It would be interesting. I just think the pockets of space that Giakoumakis, we saw it against Rangers in February. He basically stretched that back line, didn't he, all night. And if you've got someone feeding from what he's creating, it would be interesting to see. I think there will be opportunities in games this season. And Michael Ross comes in to call it total football. Well, that's interesting because, most people look at the Dutch total football revolution when they won, Dutch football won, I think, was it 3 European Cups in a row, Lawrence? And, you've got Feyenoord, actually the first Dutch team to win the European Cup was Feyenoord against Celtic. But total football in its infancy, you would need to go back to the 50s, and it was Ferenc Puskás's Hungarian side who eventually managed over in Australia Ange Postecoglou. And you can just tell, Sean, that some of that influence is fed through to Ange's philosophy, can't you?
Oh, 100%, yeah. And that's why Postecoglou always talks about his dad as well, and how he just wants, anytime he puts a team out, he just wants to impress his dad and his dad's spirit and how he remembers him and things like that. So he's really tied to that philosophy, and he'll never give that up. He'll never compromise in that which is like quite a thing, really, and hopefully that plays out in a positive sense in Europe this year. It'd be really something to see if he can translate that onto the big stage.
Let's open up on that one then, because you've got this philosophy. It seems to marry in with that traditional Celtic style. We go back to Jock Stein's quote about winning the European Cup, playing a certain brand of football. Was it just about winning it, but it was the brand of football that you deployed as well. But how will that fit in Europe? Because we have seen a very cavalier style previously with Brendan Rodgers, who was very stubborn in that he didn't want to really change in Europe, Sean. And I think some people are concerned with that. If you really, meet some of the real big guns, you don't want a 7-0, a 7-1, 5-0 kind of scoreline. How do you think this will translate onto the European stage this season in the Champions League?
I think it will translate well, but you have to rely on the quality at a certain point. You're going to have to rely on some one-on-one quality, and that's where it's going to show or tell. When he came in last year and he was saying, if they scored 3, we'll score 4. That's not something we've really seen in Scotland because teams aren't having a crack at us. But it's something we did see in Europe where the results were consistently 3-2, 4-3, that sort of thing. And, you might get one like the Bayer Leverkusen where we lost 4-0. But I think the philosophy really is defending from the front, and that's really takes a lot of pressure off. And look, as you said, Brendan Rodgers was getting annihilated with playing his type of football, not adjusting it. But I think this is a bit of a different thing. I don't think that's the same. I don't think that's a fair comparison. And yeah, we will see, hopefully and positively. But I don't want us to be doing the thing where we did with Rodgers, where we were all crying out for the return to Lenny ball, Barcelona at home tactics. Yeah. Look, I mean, maybe if you're playing Liverpool, Barcelona, Real Madrid, you might need to adjust. But basically anyone outside the top 10 in Europe, we should be playing that fearless brand, I think.
Fearless, like the flag behind you, just going all at it with the boxing gloves on. I remember you were probably there, Lawrence, Chalky telling us at McCool's in Glasgow that even when he was at Man U in the academy, he found Brendan Rodgers' teams really easy to suss out. And I just don't think that the same can be said about Ange Postecoglou's side.
No, I don't think it can, mate. And you're going back to Puskas. I'd have thought you would have went back to Jimmy Hogan. That's who Puskas in Hungary credit, the great Celtic coach of the 40s who had such an influence on the upcoming lines and the style of football then.
I know I'm old, Lawrence, but the 40s is just before my time.
Yeah, mate, I did say you were there, but you do know your history.
Absolutely. No, thanks for that. Thank you. You're right. Jimmy Hogan, obviously, he was a pioneer, wasn't he? And, he went from Celtic and he was a massive part of that implementation of a certain style of football, which, again, you look at the Hungarian game against England where they annihilated them, and it was one of it was a video. I don't know what kind of video, later on in life that Jock Stein continually watched. He really wanted to implement this beautiful style of football. And I think we've got a student of the game in Ange Postecoglou, and every one of us really appreciates what he's bringing to Celtic. But Lawrence, when we're talking about European football, what's your thoughts on that? Because we have seen cavalier approaches, albeit slightly differently, backfiring on us. We've got the big draw on the 25th of this month coming up. We're all very excited. Whatever draw you're going to get is going to be difficult. But do you agree with Sean that that there has to be a level of caution when you're coming up against some of these top sides?
I don't know if it's caution so much, maybe realism, but we saw it in glimpses. Look at that away against Betis. It was a crack in 20 minutes. They're even away against Leverkusen. We've got to remember, that was Ange, first year in the door, not a complete squad by any means. That it certainly wasn't the level of squad he's got to choose from now. So we've seen that it can work in patches of games very early on when he's still trying to implement it. So I think this second season, I wouldn't see there's any reason for him to adjust his ideals. And indeed, he's already come out and said that he doesn't adjust his philosophy. This is the way he knows how to win football matches. And, it's been pretty successful for him throughout his career. So you'd need to say, well, he's probably entitled to give it a go, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think he'll be buzzing to actually test himself on a Champions League stage. We're going to talk a wee bit about Jota. I don't want to forget about not only the goal but the overall performance of Jota. Egyptian King. There'll be a few in this studio happy as well that Starfelt has scored his first goal, because I never shut up about it last season, to the point where if I was a betting man, I'd probably back him every game, knowing that it eventually it would come. Now, with regards to, we're talking about European football, we know that sometimes it can be a one-on-one, a bit of brilliance, Sean. And if you're talking about brilliance so far this season, you've got to talk about Jota. What another phenomenal performance. Every goal he scores seems to be better than the last. It really does seem to have something a wee bit different this season. But again, we went back to that argument about just because we've signed him permanently doesn't mean to say that we've signed the same player. I mean, he's bedding into the second season, full pre-season under his belt. And I actually think players like him and Juranovic and Hatate and a few others are going to get better. But how impressed have you been with the start to the season that Jota's made?
Yeah, he's been immense, and not just the spectacular goals he's been scoring, but his link-up play with Juranovic down the right has been brilliant. There was a point today where they just did this move, and I was, they just read each other so well, and even other players are just seeing him running into the box. He's reminds me of, I don't know, it doesn't remind me of anyone that's ever played for Celtic before, to be honest. I don't know, who would you even compare him to?
See, that's an interesting chat, because during the week there, I'm not sure what day it was, but we were talking about other players we brought in out in the wing and on loan, and at the time, I would have signed El Yunusi if we could have done on a permanent, and I know a lot of Celtic fans would have signed the likes of Paddy Roberts, but like Sean says, Lawrence, different types of players. I mean, can you remember someone with that kind of flair and that ability that Jota seems to display?
On the wing, I don't know, Brian McLaughlin. Not the 90s, I don't know.
Brian McLaughlin, there's a callback.
Yeah.
You're talking of the original or Eddie Munster from the 1990s?
The original, mate. The original. Yeah.
Right.
He's definitely something. But I think as with these, I suppose, Maverick-style players, they're Mavericks because they've got that difference, individuality to their game. So it's kind of hard to compare people that the very thing about their game's the individual talent. So you're going, who's this guy? Who's this thing like? He's got this uniqueness to his game. Who's he like? Well, it's kind of hard because it's unique, isn't it? That's the thing that's making him stand out.
He's a player out of time. Like, the reason he wasn't getting a game for a team like Benfica is because he has that style that, if you think back to like 2003, 2004, when you had Thierry Henry, JJ Okocha, Paulo Di Canio, Yuri Djorkaeff all lighting up the Premiership, those players wouldn't get a look in at the Premiership anymore. Like, the kind of games moved on from that. And that's Jota would have fitted in right in that era. And it's just a miracle that he's managed to find his way into this team where he can do that and be that player.
I think it's a great point, because when you look back on that, it was probably one of my most enjoyable as a fan times, and I was interested outside of the Celtic bubble at that point, Sean. I did watch a lot more football outside of Celtic because I did find it far more entertaining, and you had the individuals, but it's all about systems now, isn't it? And in particularly in the big leagues, I'm talking about the top 4, top 6 leagues where they play a system, and that individual brilliance often, just won't fit. But last season, I was constantly moaned at, and I don't mind that, getting moaned at on the comments, because I was comparing him to David Ginola, a player who didn't play for Celtic, but obviously almost did. He was in the building, we didn't sign him. What was that, Lawrence?
Tried to charge Fergus for the taxi.
Who, Ginola?
Yeah, didn't he? He left Celtic and then taxi into Central Station and away down to Newcastle.
Well,
he came back to open the stand.
He did. He did play. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did play. Yeah, he did play.
Ferdinand scored for them? I can't remember now. Is it Ferdinand scored for them that game?
I mean, I need to check. Obviously, the famous story also is of John Hughes picking up Rod Stewart. That was his first act as a Celtic player. Go and pick up Rod because he needs to cut the ribbon. Ginola had been in the building at the time. He would have been a phenomenal signing, from PSG. I'd need to check if he actually played against us for No, he didn't, because that was in the same season he signed for Newcastle. Mahé did. Mahé and Paul Le Guen and Patrice Loco and all that. But he was part of that side and he signed for Newcastle. Whose brother?
Socrates' wee brother played against us.
For PSG?
Yeah, right.
That was his wee brother. Wow.
That's Socrates' wee brother, yeah.
The things you learn on Axom, Sean, it's incredible. But Ginola would be the player that I would, because he could also play both wings, couldn't he? And just the way that he glides past players, but also he had this ability to cut inside. And we've seen a couple of the goals this season where Ginola's cut inside and he struck things. And a few of them actually haven't come off. But I'm going to go for Ginola, who also had great hair. Maybe not as good as Jota, but he had a phenomenal mane on that head of his. And if Jota keeps going the way he's going, he is going to be one of the players, though, Sean, that you're going to have to try and protect him, because the vultures will be circling Celtic Park. And there's a few guys like that I'm a bit worried about, I'm going to be honest with you, because we do have a litany of players here, a litany of talent, and Juranovic obviously has got that interest. Before we go, let's have a wee chat about that. Do you think there will be any big departures? And do you also think that, we're going to get another couple of bodies in before the transfer window shuts?
I reckon we get one in, maybe two, but I think there's no big departures this side of the World Cup. I think with the World Cup being when it is, that's when players like Juranovic will go in the shop window, and if they leave, it'll be in January, when our Champions League will probably be done with, but maybe not, hopefully not. So yeah, I'd say not in the next 2 weeks, no big players going.
Right, first of all, Gary Doonan comes in, and I'll tell you what, you better check this, Lawrence. Was he not Dunga's brother?
Yeah. No, I'm sure it's
You better fact check it.
We'll have a fact check on it, mate.
Fact check it, and Michael's telling me to let it go. Let it go. Listen, I've never let go of the fact that he didn't sign for us, Michael. I'm still reeling on that. So every time I can talk about the great man, I do bring him in. And what a great kit Newcastle had back then as well. Home and away. Adidas. Maybe Adidas should actually model our home jersey on the Newcastle away jersey that they had in that era. It was fantastic. Remember the purple and blue one?
Yeah, they were against Liverpool, didn't they? 4-3 games.
They did 2 4-3 games against Liverpool, didn't they?
They did, yeah. Fantastic. Here we go. JR reckons that you're right. Is anybody checking this? JR reckons that you're right, Lawrence. I didn't know he was anybody's wee brother, so I'm just going with the flow here. Here we go. Jota, Larson, Nakamura. That's interesting that you're rating him in the top 3 players as well, but he does have that ability, doesn't he?
Can Jota hit a free kick? I know the other two could. No,
I can't.
Maybe something we need to add to the armoury of this team. Now we've got Connor sussed.
I reckon he's like a Paddy McCourt that can track back.
Oh, a fit Paddy McCourt, an athletic Paddy McCourt. There you go, like it. There you go. Listen, it's been a great performance by Celtic and a really good set of bulletins today as well. If you haven't already noticed, a Celtic State of Mind are teaming up this season with Celtic Down Under, our friends over in Australia and Japan. One of you guys are based in Japan as well. For the match day coverage, we stream live on Celtic Down Under's Twitter and the Celtic State of Mind's YouTube. So if you haven't already done so, get the boys followed on the socials and on the YouTube channel. Subscribe to them on there as well. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks everybody for getting involved. Thank you to Lawrence and Sean for joining me again on A Celtic State of Mind.